Welcome, everyone, to the Aging and Spirituality podcast, where we're exploring the deepening journey of life after the age of 60, one that brings us both challenges and profound awakening. I'm your host, Kathy Lee Taylor,
And I'm Chris Jensen.
and we are so happy you are here today.
We sure are.
We're going to dive into something that many of us know intimately, but we don't always know how to name it or navigate it. And that subject is solitude. Not the kind of loneliness that aches. That's not the kind of solitude I'm talking about, but the kind of aloneness that, when approached with presence and openness, it truly becomes a doorway to the inner sanctum, becomes a sacred space and a teacher for us. So I titled this talk, The Spirituality of Solitude, Embracing Aloneness in Later Life. And I invite you now to slow down, listener. Explore this with us, wherever you are, whether you're folding laundry or you're walking or you're sitting in your favorite chair, whatever you're doing, just take a moment for yourself and really listen in, because we're going to talk about some very interesting things that will likely help you in this journey. Something many of us experience but often feel we shouldn't talk about is how quiet life can be as we age. It becomes quieter because the children grow up and the careers slow down or they go away totally. Your partners pass sometimes, and the social circles shrink in on you. And you wonder where the friends have all gone. And some of them have actually left your life. And so it does become a lot quieter. We often find ourselves alone. And we didn't anticipate it. We don't think about those things when we're younger. Nobody wants to think about those things.
Hmm.
Special days come and go sometimes, and you don't even get to visit with your loved ones. It happens. Their schedules are busy, and there's nothing, no one to fault about that. It's just the circle of life repeating itself. But knowing how to be at peace with those changes really does help you, really does someone well if they pay attention to it. Even if you're surrounded by people you love, a kind of spiritual solitude begins to stir inside you as we age. It's a sense of being alone with yourself in a way that you may not have known or allowed in before. Is it emptiness or is it space? What does it mean to me now? You find yourself wondering that. In many spiritual traditions, from Christian monasticism to the Buddhist retreat into indigenous elderhood, solitude is not feared, it is revered. Let me say that again. Solitude in aging is not feared, it is revered. How can that be?
In yoga, I was just reading something from one of the great yogis, Sri Ramakrishna from the 1800s. And he said, there are those who, the ones who are the deepest experiences, they just want to spend their time in meditation with God.
Mhm.
And that's what happens for them. And then there are others who fill their life. The next group fills their life with so many busy things that they give it some time and energy,
Yeah.
but not enough. And then there's the third kind that I'm not interested at all. But I thought that
You
was,
can't imagine, but yes.
yeah, but I thought that was interesting, that,
It's a beautiful way to look at it.
yeah,
And it's probably because, it really is a rite of passage, because you start to feel these things, and who's there to tell you what is going on? Nobody, you don't really understand what's happening. And so you kind of stick your toe in the water and then you're back out and then,
yeah,
you keep doing it until you figure it out, or you meet a friend, or a teacher comes available, or something happens that you connect and start to understand what's truly happening inside of you, or you're listening to our podcast. Ha ha ha, and you're learning about these things.
yeah,
That's why
yeah,
we're hanging out here.
yeah.
So, so yeah, it's really important to make the distinction. I love that story, because solitude is definitely different from loneliness.
Oh, yeah. So the solitude can be so fulfilling. I mean, you don't have the distractions. You can really focus in.
In on the soul,
Hmm.
which, if you don't know what that means, then there's questions in your mind. But when we say it's loneliness is feel it. It's like a lack. It suggests a
Yeah.
lack. It suggests a longing, a disconnection, and even pain.
Mhm.
Loneliness is not doesn't really have a good connotation. But solitude, think of it this way. Solitude is presence,
Mhm.
owning who you are in the moment. Solitude is chosen. It's about being with yourself on purpose. I love those words. It because I've always been one of these people, and Chris and I have talked about this so many times with the idea of freedom. Freedom has always been a big
Yeah.
um, driver in my life. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. That presence to be who you are in the moment, to own it. And solitude will help you get there. Psychologist Carl Jung once said, loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you.
Yeah.
Right? Think about that. It brings us back to that idea of truly being seen and heard for who we are.
Yeah.
So, solitude is where the crucial things that are really important for us to know in this lifetime start to rise to the surface. We give them a chance to rise to the surface so we can truly get a handle on who we are, our authenticity, our gifts, our talents, what we're here for, our purpose. I know that's a word that's been dragged through a lot of spiritual mud, but there is that sense of a purpose, something that you're here to do. And the gift of solitude is that it gives you back to yourself. And that's probably someone that you've been ignoring for years.
But what do you mean by that?
Well, when you're younger, you're not thinking about the things that are inside of you. When your mind is busy doing things in the survival world, you're really not paying attention to who you are. But as
Get
you
closer, your volume's going away.
as you have these moments of solitude, as you get older, all of those other things start to fall away, and becomes really important is really understanding who that inner self is and what they're trying to tell you,
Mm.
you know? So there's a story I wanted to share of somebody that was talking to me about this particular subject. And she said, her name was Marianne. She was about 72 years old. She said, when my husband passed, I thought the silence in the house would break me. I never lived alone before, and the nights were the worst. And so she get the TV on, just for the sound. But about 6 months in, she's into it, into that loss. She said something actually
Yeah.
shifted.
Yeah.
She turned off the TV. She started to journal, started watching the birds outside, sitting on the porch and just doing nothing. And in that nothingness, something sacred entered. Those were her words. In that nothingness, something sacred entered. She started hearing her own voice again. And she said, I haven't heard that in years. So, those are things that we get glimpses of, right? Like we were talking about in our earlier parts of our lives, where we have so many responsibilities and things to do. But there's always that yearning. There's always that little voice in the back of our head talking to us. And that story kind of stuck with me because that really describes, what the invitation is from solitude. It's really to hear our voice again. Think about that. So if you look at some of the spirit,
That's such a factor. I remember when I was going through a divorce many years ago, and
yeah.
I remember telling the marriage and family counselor, the other day I was just sitting there doing nothing for an hour. And she said, that was probably your most productive time. And I said,
You
it
you couldn't do
was.
that before. You couldn't do that before.
I
You had
couldn't.
much to
Yeah.
do.
It was so productive. It really was because a lot of stuff flushed out,
Yep.
and there was a peace that came. You know? And I was just sitting there doing nothing for that period of time for a few days in a row.
Yep. Is that all? Wow. I did more than that when I got divorced.
Well,
It does
no, I
allow
did more than
you to
that. I'm
do that.
just
Yeah,
talking about the nothingness thing because that
yes,
really was significant. I mean,
it does. It allows you to make that transition and to
it
understand what's
helped.
happening.
It helped. Not that there wasn't all kinds of stuff going on, because there was,
100%.
or
Yep, of
not times when I just felt like the world was falling apart.
course. Yeah.
But those are the times that help.
The solitude helps you get through it.
Yeah.
It really does. When you look at some of the spiritual teachings that most of us have heard across time, solitude is really a theme in them. When you think about Jesus, he spent, I don't know how many days in the desert alone, 40 days.
Yeah.
Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree all by himself.
Mhm.
Mystics and poets and sages, they all went inward and away from the world before they came back with the insight.
Well, the yoga master at the yoga center. I
Mhm.
mean, he spent
Same
5 months in
up
silence.
on the mountain. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's he came out having had very deep and profound experiences
Deep
that
experience.
he probably wouldn't have had if he was not having that time without the distractions.
Yeah. And the way he describes that is it never went away. He
That
stayed,
never went away from him. Yes.
state that he achieved on that mountain in those months. Never went away. He's lived in it ever since. So it's those times when you get to introspect and
Mm-hmm.
really figure out, where you are in the spiritual journey. So it's good to acknowledge that we live in this world that doesn't honor solitude. People praise productivity and noise and constant contact, but
Constant having to do stuff. Yes.
yes, you do have to, but carrying and understanding what solitude is, practicing it, I feel so blessed to have had my yoga practices. It's made me so much, I guess the word's wiser, just not having to struggle so much, like understanding what real wisdom is often comes from stillness and silence, times that you're not around other people,
Yeah.
elders do that. They are they're ready to meet, how do I say that? They're ready to meet this maturity into being an elder
Mm.
with love and an open heart,
Yeah.
solitude can show you how to do that.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I was just gonna, I think there's a little piece here because we can find, okay, we're invited. Oh, solitude, and this is actually interesting. Solitude invites you to withdraw from the outer world and tend to your inner garden. And when that starts sounding good to you, it's because you're starting to enjoy stillness. You're starting to enjoy those intangible things about life that start to become so clear, and you learn gratitude and you learn eventually how to stay in states of joy.
Mm-hmm.
So so keep that in mind, if you're when you start to do your practices to embody solitude, which I'm going to talk about right now, think about those end results. I mean, being able to walk around in bliss, being able to conjure up joy anytime you want. These are some of the beautiful things you can get from connecting with spirit. So here's some practices. These should be gentle practices, not stuff you feel like is work. If it doesn't sound like fun to you to do, don't do it. But here's some ideas that can help you really get into that place of solitude and just, suck the juice right out of it, so to speak.
Enjoy it,
Enjoy it.
to
Yeah.
make the most of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of them is just creating a daily ritual of quiet, just 10 minutes away from the phone, no distractions, just you, your breath. Chris is a master at that. She's a pranayama queen, so she can breathe her way through the whole day.
I
Just
don't know.
be in bliss. Another practice you can do is spend some time in nature. Nature is a teacher and it's a quiet presence that you can tune into. It'll teach you where to go and what solitude really feels like. You don't need to do anything, be anything, just be. You learn to just be with nature. Um, Journaling is a nice way when you write to yourself. Think about that. Let the pen writing to yourself, whether it's this age, further age, younger age, whatever it is, do it without judging yourself. Solitude really just gives your soul a chance to speak, permission to speak, and tell you if it
I
needs
like that. Yeah, because
it need-
we're
needs to.
so busy that we don't allow that to come through.
That's 100% right. Yeah, how many times have we heard our teachers say, if your mind is like so wrapped up and your heart is just so blocked, how is God going to get through?
How
How's
to
your
get
soul going
through.
to get through? Can't hear you. So the first thing you do is unlock those. You can also make a sacred space, a candle, a corner chair, a small altar. It doesn't have to be dramatic or just a little place where you can go and be yourself. My own little corner in my own little room. Remember that? that I can't remember the movie, but that's Cinderella. Cinderella as a little kid. Claim a part of yourself, a part of your environment. It is a space that where you just go and go inward, listen inward. And here's one that I really, really like. This is so easy to do wherever you are. You can take this wherever you are. You reframe aloneness. So instead of saying, I'm alone, because when you say that, what happens? All of a sudden your heart kind of crunches and you're like, "Oh, I don't like that." So instead of saying, I'm alone, say, I am with myself.
Mm, I like that.
Doesn't that feel good?
I
I
choose that.
am with that feels so much better. I am with myself.
Yeah.
Feel my heart just like fill with that. Like,
And you could also think, I appreciate this opportunity to
yes,
have solitude, to not be distracted.
to be with myself 100%. That's a real good one. Just take that one and run with that one because that's really, really powerful. So there you go. Listeners, as we close, I want to leave you with this quote by a poet. His name's John O'Donohue, probably very well known to our listeners. May you find in yourself a confident tranquility. May you be given the wisdom to know when to be alone and when to be with others.
Oh, that's that last part there, that's the balance. You
Yeah,
see, we sometimes we think we always have to be with other people.
yeah, one or the other.
Or on the other hand, some people think they always have to be alone, but if there's a balance, you
Yep,
need the time on your own to have the personal growth and development. And then you need
100%.
interaction with other people as well.
And it really is a what's the word, a wire, when you're walking the wire. And
Mhm. A
you know,
balance.
we've learned to do that our whole lives, balance
Mhm.
between those two worlds. Takes practice.
Mhm.
So AG can bring us many gifts. Some are there are wrapped in silence, others in letting go. But solitude, that's the companion who waits for us with open arms, not to isolate, but to integrate. Ooh, doesn't that sound good?
Yeah.
That makes the heart very, very happy. So, listeners, thank you for joining us today. If this episode touched your heart in any way, I want to invite you to go to YouTube and subscribe and like and share. Share with a friend, please. We want to hear what you have to say about us. Leave us a review, okay?
Yeah, and we'd like to help as many people as we can enjoy the silence,
Yes.
enjoy the solitude.
Enjoy the solitude. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and remember, solitude isn't the absence of something, it's the presence of something sacred. Remember that,
Bye.
listeners. See you next week.